today I am super thrilled to invite Yong-Soo Chung onto the show.
There's kind of three parts to finding a niche. And I'm talking about a high value niche. The first one is your actual experiences. The second thing is perceived authority. And the final component to this, which I think that I haven't heard of anybody talk about, is
There's the meme of me in the company where I'm like doing this saying, this is below my lie, don't bring it to me, right? And I think the lesson there to me, and hopefully that resonates with you, is a lot of people don't need this kind of dictatorial leadership that you think they need.
Kind of knew I wanted to go to this boot camp for software engineering. And there was one boot camp in San Francisco that was like pretty strong. It's a strong program. And I actually applied and I got denied for that program.
If Jeff Bezos calls you and offers you unlimited supply of one item from Amazon, what would you pick?
I'm going to have to go with palette wrap on this.
It was like anything I could tweet was going viral. I had a Midas touch. Anything I did was like, oh my God, this, that. What is the proudest part of your story? Of your career, of your life so far?
Yeah. So a big shift happened for me when I started thinking about...
Hey everybody, welcome to the Build in Public podcast. I'm your host KP, and on this show, I interview world-class entrepreneurs, ambitious startup founders, creators, and builders on the internet who are boldly building the future in public. This podcast is my excuse to take you all on a curious journey to understand, learn, and hopefully be inspired by the worldviews, insights, and stories of these fabulous people changing the world. So far, I've gotten the rare privilege to sit down with incredible guests like Gary Vee, Alexis Ohanian, Kat Cole, Sahil Lavingia, and many more leaders. So check out the full podcast listing at buildingpublicpodcast.com. Now buckle up and get ready for our latest episode. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of the Build in Public podcast. And I'm your host, KP. And today I am super thrilled to invite Yong-Soo Chung onto the show. Yong-Soo, thanks for joining from San Francisco.
KP, thanks so much for having me here. I feel like I've known you since the beginning of my creator journey. And this is like kind of full circle, man. I'm so happy to be here.
You've been such an authentic creator, to follow along. And I can't remember when I hit follow. I think it's been a few months now. And, you've been, such a fun account to follow. You've been such a fun individual to follow and learn from. And the parts, like a couple of things I want to highlight to the listeners, and viewers about you that resonate deeply with me is your story. I think you mentioned something about 12 years ago where you got started in San Francisco with zero. You kind of like a classic example of someone who made the most of what was given, to him. And so this whole decade plus journey that you've shared repeatedly on your Twitter really resonates with me. You went from zero to now $5 million a couple times. I think you've said in your company journey, which we're going to double click into about how you got there. What are some businesses you started? The other thing that resonates a lot is that you're also a fellow podcaster. So I love that.
Yeah.
You recently completed 1 year of podcasting. So congrats. This is a grind.
Thank you.
This is not that easy. Huge respect for anyone who goes over 20, 30 episodes. And I loved your podcast. I listened to the last one, the recent episode, and you bring a lot of actionable lessons, like life lessons, I think you call them, to the listeners. So you come off as a very authentic creator. You share, to help, to share, to serve, and you want to help people and genuinely add value. So thank you for all that you do on Twitter and in DMs. I've really enjoyed our friendship, virtual friendship, and now I'm getting a chance to spend 40, 50 minutes with you and help everybody else get a sense of who you are too.
I appreciate that, man. It's been a fun journey so far, and as you know, the creator journey can be quite grueling at times. But having friends like you, supporting my journey, that really means a lot. So I appreciate that.
So let's start with the Twitter journey, right? I feel like your story resonates with a lot of our listeners because I talk about building in public and all, and one of the hardest challenges is knowing what is your actual niche to talk about, right? There's one thing to think that this could be my niche, and then you experiment with it. But really what resonates with people is something we can't really predict on day one, right? And you went through this exact loop recently. So can
Mhm.
you share any lessons or any nuggets to someone who's listening and wondering, what is my niche really? Like, how do I identify my niche?
Yeah. So, this is a really interesting and tough question to answer. So I really thought about, as a creator, like how do you differentiate yourself? Because there's so many creators with, everyone talks about being a niche of one, category of one. But how do you actually do that? Because, I mean, at some point, everyone's going to be a category of one. And then it's like, if everyone's a category of one, then no one is a category of, you know what I mean? Like it's at some point, it just kind of, yeah, it just kind of blends in. And so the way I thought about it is, there's kind of three parts to finding a niche. And I'm talking about a high value niche, right? So when you think about your niche, you also want to think about the positioning of that niche. So like, what type of audience are you going to attract, right? What type of people are you going to surround yourself with because of the content that you're putting out there? And so the three different areas are, the first one is your actual experiences, which I think most people would actually, they know what that is because a lot of people talk about that.
Right.
The second thing is perceived authority. And so this is very different from real experience because, I could walk into a grocery store and, someone who's like the top researcher of like, I don't know, some rare disease might be in there, but I have no clue who that is. You know what I mean? Like, and it's the same thing when you go online, like you could be the best in something, but if you don't position yourself, then no one will know that you're actually the best at that, right? So that's the second component to it. And the final component to this, which I think that I haven't heard of anybody talk about, is this supply and demand thing. So when you think about the economics of information, what's out there on social media, whatever, essentially you're playing a game of supply and demand. And so if you have experience and you can talk about something that is very unique to you that no one else can talk about, then the supply is going to be very small, right? Because you're going to be the only one who can really talk about that. But then the demand, let's say, no one cares about that, let's say, right? Like, let's say you're an expert in, I don't know, like some like really obscure programming language from like the 80s or whatever, right? Like you're an expert at this like really niche thing and you could talk about it for hours. But then like if no one cares about that, then it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So if you have a niche that is, low supply, which is what you're going for, low supply in information, but then high demand, that's when you're going to get your high value niche. And so what I mean by that is like, I'll give you an example. So like when AI first came out, no one knew how to do prompt engineering correctly. And so you have this huge pent up demand of people trying to figure this out. It's like a new wave of, AI is taking over the world. Like, how do I get in front of it? Huge demand. And there was not a lot of information out there, experts out there who knew prompt engineering. And so what you had there was this like perfect combination of like super high demand and very low supply right at the beginning when this was all happening.
Right.
And that's why like all the AI newsletters just exploded, like 100,000, 200,000 subscribers. Like it exploded because people were looking for tools and like, how do I build the next AI tool? And so that was a super high valuable niche at that time. Now, obviously things have changed now, the landscape. So there's more players now. And so there's more supply of information. And I would argue probably a little less demand as well because people are getting used to living with AI.
Yeah. Right.
And so now it's kind of come down where if I'm trying to be an AI niche creator, like I'm not going to get the same traction as I did like a year ago, right?
Right.
So it's this idea of supply and demand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think the third part definitely is underrated. I don't think a lot of people actively, intentionally think about it as often. And so with these three components, as I rephrase them or sort of bring them back to the surface once again for the listeners, it is the supply and demand, which is the third component. The second component is perceived authority, which is how do they know, how credible you are about what you're talking about. And the first one obviously is real life personal experience. You use these three and you got to the niche of personal holding companies, right? What were some other niches you were, I guess, what were other pit stops before you got to this point? What were
Yeah.
some other niches that you had to stop briefly until you got to this point?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, KP, because I struggled for almost a full year finding my niche. And like, it's frustrating because at the beginning, I had all this like experience building this company, like 8 years, $20 million total revenue, all that stuff. And so I'm like posting about my experience, but then the people that are responding, there's like no one cares. And not only that, but like the people, what I was like watching people go viral on X, and I'm like, this guy who's like a 20-year-old person who has never had any business is going viral with the same content that I'm writing. He has no, whatever experience, and I'm like tweeting into the void, right? And so that was like going
Right.
back to that framework, the 3-step framework. Like that was, I had one, which was like my experience, but then my perceived authority was basically nothing. Like no one knew what I did, like,
Mm.
and so I really had to like change that up. But basically, when I first joined Twitter, it was
Including the
like,
funny thing is, including keen minds like me, right? Like I'm not like your average sort of like judgy, I guess lurker. I'm like very active and always trying to lift people up, and even through my scout radar, I couldn't get to the perceived authority of what you were special about, what your authority was, initially. And that's why
yeah,
when you finally broke through that bubble and got to that niche, and remember my comments under your threads and stuff. I'm like, hurrah! Finally, thank
finally,
you, because
yeah,
I finally get it, right? I finally get it. It's kind
yeah,
of like I finally I'm able to complete the puzzle of who
who I am.
what your niche is gonna be about,
Yeah.
right? So I was so happy for you when that came up.
Yeah, no. So basically, I decided to start talking more about my experiences, but then talking about like different parts of company building. But to be honest with you, KP, like it was so disjointed. Like I was talking about my, French bulldog business, and then all of a sudden I'm talking about my pocket knife business, and then I have a 3PL business for e-commerce brands, and like it doesn't seem like it's connected in any way, shape, or form. And so I started talking more about that to increase my authority, my perceived authority, but it still didn't really catch on because it was so like, okay, if I talk about e-commerce, then I'm gonna get e-commerce people, right? But then if I talk about like
Right.
logistics, I'm gonna get more logistics. So basically, I was like, how do I like position this and package this together to make it more sense, right? And so when I first came across the personal holding company idea, I was like, this is what I have. And what's crazy, KP, is that I've been doing this for 8 years now, and people are now trying to build their personal holding companies. Like even people like, for example, like Anthony Pompliano actually DM'd me after he saw one of my tweets, and he was like, let's talk about personal holding company. Like these people are like trying to build their own now, but then all of a sudden I found myself in a position of authority because it's like, all right, like now I'm 8 years into this, I can actually talk about it.
Mm.
And all of a sudden we go back to that supply and demand thing. Like supply is very low. Like not a lot of people can say they've built a personal holding company for 8 years. And the demand, all of a sudden, it's a really hot topic. Like holding companies in general is like a very hot topic. And so demand was
Right
high,
now,
but this
yes.
really specific niche of personal holding company is not a lot of supply of people talking about it. And so all of a sudden, like
Mm.
my stock went up in terms of like, my content started getting more engagement. People were following me. People who I thought I would never be able to reach started following me, like these bigger accounts. And I'm like, all right, there's something here. And so that's how I found, my niche. But it took me a while, and it took me, really, it's about packaging, KP. Like it's not about
Yeah.
like I was saying the same stuff, but it's more that now
Right.
it's like this is how it works together, and everyone's like,
Right.
okay, I got it now.
Yeah. Right. Packaging, and also I think, it's one of those things where the wand picks the wizard kind of thing. I always joke about this, where you really don't know this on day one. If you knew this, if somehow I showed up at your doorstep on day one of your new Twitter journey and said, "Oh my God, Yong-Soo, this is gonna be your niche," and you're gonna be like, "Nah, I don't know." You're not gonna have the conviction. The conviction comes from the experience of going through the desert. Like it's this sort of the rocky path that you take builds this thick skin and the muscle and everything. And so when you finally see signal in the sea of noise, you're like, okay, now I get it, right? Otherwise, you don't have conviction. You just have a potential niche. So I remember going through the same thing in 2018. I was tweeting about philosophy. Like if you followed me from back then, like oh God bless you. Anyone who follows the guy, I have so much respect for them because I've gone through 8 niches. Like no
Wow.
code was a later one, but I'm saying like in the beginning it was like philosophy and then Buddhism. I went to Buddhist camps and stuff like that. I tweeted a lot about that. I tweeted a lot about esoteric things about what is the self, what is the what is the all these meta things. And then I tweeted about I used to tweet about the community building, tweet about product hunt as a niche. And I cycled through basically all these and I really didn't feel resonance from the community. It was a like here, a comment here, but it wasn't like I was getting the big names to DM me or a wave of, small names to resonate until I hit up on 2 things. One was no code in 2020. It was like anything I could tweet was going viral. I had a Midas touch. Anything I did was like, oh my God, this, that. But partly because I had proof of work of 15 no code projects I built in public. So it's undeniable proof. Like with you, the same thing with 8 years of traction is undeniable proof, right? And I would get pings from like Eric Thornburg, who ran On Deck. And that's really why I got my job, because he was noticing that KP was at the forefront of this wave of something called no code. And I was hired to be the no code director at On Deck. So that was the niche for 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. And then slowly I pivoted away from just no code to building in public, because the same thing happened again. Like there was a lot of resonance, but I didn't know this playbook on October 2020, 2018. It was serendipitous. So really it's a painful journey, right? Like you can't make it easy for anybody. Sometimes some people ask me, what is the hack? What is the shortcut? I'm like, I wish there was a shortcut. I will give you the shortcut, but you won't have conviction on that.
Right.
Would you agree?
I think I would agree. I think that everyone needs to go through this period of experimentation. And honestly, it's like almost like it's like when you first try to become like I don't know, a monk or something, like the first months are gonna be like you're gonna question your existence, like you know what I mean? Like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? But then you got to get through that. You got to get through it.
Yeah.
And then once
But
you
the
get through
magical
that,
part, though, is somehow it comes back to something deep within you. That part is for sure. Like the resonating part from the audience didn't come and tarnish the fact that it's something that you personally care about. It is still something you actually care about, like the topic, right? So it's not some esoteric thing about dentists or whatever, right? It's something you still like personally. It's something about you. Same thing with me building in public. It's not, even though it came from the audience, it wasn't like, I don't know, like vegan cooking recipes. It was actually something I care about, which is building in public, right?
Right.
So ultimately it comes back to the source within you. But we don't know which of those elements of us that would become the niche until you kind of test every element, So going back to your story one more time, there were so many inflection points that you tweet about, in your e-commerce journey and then the pocket knife thing. I actually want to get a sense of like summarize this odyssey that you've been on from the lens of inflection points, as in like I did X and then I did Y and then I did Z, and give us maybe some numbers to contextualize each inflection point.
you're talking about just creator journey or just everything?
Yeah, I'm talking about no founder journey.
Founder journey. All right. So I started my career in finance in New York City, and we'll speed through that part. But basically, I was a trader on Wall Street, and then I realized that I didn't see myself surrounding in a finance career for the rest of my life. And so the way I thought about this was like, do I see my future self 5 to 10 years down the road hanging out with the same people that I'm hanging out with at that point, surrounded by people and just communities that I want to be part of? And the answer was no. I actually went to a few meetups in New York City for startups and technology, and like there's like 1-2 people that showed up. It was so like, it was like just pretty much like, it was sad, right? And so I was like, all right, I gotta get myself out of here. And so I bought my one-way ticket to San Francisco. This is back in
Which
end
year
of
was this? 2012?
2011.
2011.
Yeah, it was actually October 2011. So it's been what, exactly 12 years now?
12 years. Yeah, that's awesome.
Insane. Yeah. So 12 years ago, I came here, just one suitcase, and I didn't have a place to live. and I didn't have a
You didn't have
job.
family there. You didn't have anybody
No
there.
family. I just knew one high school friend and one college friend. That was it. Honestly, it felt like, I don't know. This is
But
this
did
is
you have a
probably
job
what
there, like just
I
in the
I didn't have
city?
a
Like,
job. Didn't have a job.
wow, wow, that is a true one-way ticket story. Wow.
One way ticket story. Yeah. So I feel like that's how a lot of immigrant, like, they feel when they first land in a
Yeah.
new environment. I mean, obviously it's
Right.
same country, so a little bit different, but still, like, I didn't know anybody. So for 3 months I was sleeping on the floor of my high school friend's apartment, a small apartment, and I was like obviously trying to save as much money, so I was eating burritos every single day for like $7 or something. And I was like going out there and networking my tail off, meeting other startup business development people, and because I came from finance, like business development was the easier path. I couldn't get into engineering.
Right.
So I was doing a lot of that, and then finally I landed a job, and then after that I was able to get an apartment. And so
Wow.
that's the origin story of how everything kind of started here. I guess I kind of almost started my life over in a way.
Wow.
And
And you were, so when you got that job in
yeah,
SF, how old were you?
I was 25, 26 maybe,
Wow. So
around there.
that must be, you're like 37 now or 36?
37.
37. I'm 35,
Yeah.
man. That's that.
Yeah.
This is, there's something about, like, I think people who get to reboot their life in like 20s, I think there is a sense of like depth, and I feel a sense of like longevity that you have. That you're not doing this on a whim. You have chosen this particular thing. Like, I feel the same thing, because in 2011 I moved to America in August from
Wow.
India, and it was a one-way ticket. Clearly, I haven't left. I've went a couple of times to visit, but like, it was definitely a one-way ticket. It was not a returning ticket. And just the same way you were talking about, I came here with a purpose. I think there's a sense of purpose when you do something like that, because I had a decent like computer almost like a computer consulting job in Chennai in India. So I left that and did this. So the purpose
Similar
is something
story.
that I think keeps us. Yeah. But anyway, so tell me, walk us through the inflection
Yeah.
point. So this is, you got your first job.
Yeah. And then I worked there for 2.5 years. And to be honest, I had a lot of fun at this first startup. This is during the heydays of startup culture, where like free lunches, you're like shooting Nerf gun like across the office. Like, this is those days, right? I think those days are not happening anymore. But yeah, we used to play Nerf basketball after lunch each day. It was insane. And I actually wrote about we used to test candidates when they joined our team. We used to play Settlers of Catan, the board game, to assess whether or not yeah, this is. But honestly, it actually worked, because we're in business development, so we had to learn how to negotiate. There's a little bit of negotiation there, and then you also like, you're going to be down at times. It's how you react. And so like, it was actually a pretty good assessment, but it was just, I don't know if that would fly now. But anyways,
I guess now you would get canceled or something, or you
yeah,
would get
you're
a
canceled, and then
episode on
discrimination.
Silicon Valley now if you did that.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so I had a blast there, and then the company was starting to not do so well, and so I was actually looking into my next options. And right around that time, actually, the company let me go, and so I didn't have a job again. But this time around, I kind of knew I wanted to go to this boot camp for software engineering, and there was one boot camp in San Francisco that was like pretty strong. It's a strong program, and I actually applied, and I got denied for that program.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, that was my plan, because I
That was
was
a
like,
gut punch, wasn't it? Mm.
it was a gut punch, and I remember this. I wrote back to that email and I said, listen, I have to do this program. Like, I have no other option. I'm gonna do this program. What do you need me to do to get into this program? I remember this. And they wrote back and said, okay, well, build a few websites, show us that you can, be at least at some level. And so like, I spent probably, let's think about it. Like, I was just let go. I have like basically not a lot of safety net or whatever. Like, I had to build myself back up. And so I was like working 24/7 on this like programming. I was like learning how to code, and like I built like Hangman online, and like I don't know, just a bunch of random projects. I sent it to them, and I got in. And so it was crazy because I was so thankful that they took me on. I mean, it was a really challenging program, but I mean, this was a huge inflection point because if you think about it, I could have given up at that moment, saying like, oh, I didn't get into this program. I'm just gonna go find another job somewhere else. But I'm like, no, this is what I want, and you're going to tell me how I'm going to be able to get into this program? I'll just do whatever it takes, but like I'm going to get in. Like that was the only path forward for me, right?
The level of grit sometimes, right? Like it just really, blows my mind. I think especially, I feel like now, I mean, I'm like, this reminds me of stories that I had in my 20s, when I had to hustle in the same way. And I'm thinking like, man, I kind of have it easy now. Right? We kind of have it easy now. Like we're worried about dumb, like thousands of followers, 2,000 followers or not, like nothing. I remember there was an exam called GRE, right? I don't know if you've heard of it. It's this is the way like a lot of immigrants come to America. And I took that exam and I was at this job which was paying me $200 a month, and the exam was $200. So basically, my whole month salary was the price of the exam, and I got what I would consider good enough score. But you're coming from India, and India has got 1 billion people, and good enough is not good enough, right? You need like. So I talked to one of my cousins who made it to America through a master's program, and she went to UPenn, and she looked at my score and she said, this is good to get an admission, but she said, do you want an admission, or do you want an admission plus scholarship? And I was like, damn, because I don't have the money to pay for my university fee, which is $70K, 60K, whatever, for master's 2 years. And I had to retake the exam by waiting 2 months, by paying half the fee, because if the fee is $200, I didn't have the money. So I saved $100 each month for 2 months. Do I get to the point of $200 and then pay that for the GRE exam and to take it? I remember for the 2 months, every single night after my day job, I would come home and study for 4 hours, 5 hours straight. And my English was terrible back then because I grew up in India and I didn't have I would watch 2 hours of Friends, and then I would take 2 hours of tests, like the prep material. And Friends was, the easy way to kind of like laugh and also learn about the language. And finally, the second time around, I think in the state, I got the top 1% score or something.
Nice.
But literally, there's no. And then, by the way, the long story short, I got the full scholarship at Vanderbilt.
Amazing.
Full scholarship. And I don't know how much GRE played a role, but definitely had a factor, apart from other things. So it's one of those things where you can actually negotiate with reality if you are willing to just persevere and have the grit. You don't have to accept, right? And which is something that I think we forget now. As I got bigger and like more successful later, and I feel like now I just accept reality. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But you can actually renegotiate with it,
That's such a powerful concept that I never put it in that terms, where you can negotiate with life. Like life gives you something that you don't like, and then you can say, no, I'm gonna
take it back,
make this work. Yeah.
Redo it. Yeah. Because think about that. Today you got like this mountain of social proof and this amazing success. I feel like that Yong-Soo was a more bad. I always think about this, by the way. I always think about like in my daily meditations, I always visualize my younger self. And dude, there were so many pitfalls and so many dead ends I ran into. I'm sure you've run into where I could have given up. I could have just chosen the safe 9-to-5 path and just got like some damn job at Deloitte or some kind of consulting. And that would have been the story. And all of those KPs and all of those versions and all of those dead ends chose to take one step further so that today I can live and I can have this convo with you. How fucking cool is that? Those KPs are the real badasses. Today I'm just like living off of there. It's kind of like inheriting the throne from your dad. You're like, I'm just the prince, like So I feel the same way about you. The way you're telling me these stories are like all those Yong-Soos, those were the versions who were like absolute badass. And I'm just saying like, just to kind of offer gratitude to the younger versions of ourselves instead of thinking of, man, I could have done something. I could have, something more. So
yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah. And then
give me some more. I want a couple more inflection points.
I'll give you a few more here. So, remember when I told you earlier that I started my life over because I left finance, right?
Yes.
It comes back. So I went to this software engineering bootcamp for 3 months, which kicked my butt, but I survived. And a company called Ripple came to recruit at the end of the program. And they said, Yong-Soo, you have an amazing background in trading because you've been working literally on Wall Street for 2 years. And I said, you're right. Like I am now a software engineer, and I have experience actually trading on the floor on Wall Street, right? As you know, as a
Mm,
trader on a hedge fund desk, trading desk. And so
right.
they saw that and they're like, pretty much like it was an immediate hire. I didn't have any technical tests that I had to pass through. By the way, 2 days before that Ripple interview, KP, I bombed a technical interview with another company, and
Wow.
they actually stopped the interview in the middle of the interview and said, "Hey, we're done. Like, get out of the building." They escorted me out of the building. I was supposed to have 4 interviews that day. I was done after the second one, right? And so, and then I went. So 2 days before this interview at Ripple, I was like, "Oh my god!" It's like I'm never gonna be able to find a job.
Right.
But then for some reason, I mean, sometimes the universe will just it's easier. Sometimes it's easier to go one way, right? So like the job at Ripple was very very it came easy to me because I had this finance background, and so I guess the lesson here is that you may think that you're starting over. Let's say someone's working right now at a 9 to 5 at some company, and you're like, oh man, like if I give this up, I'm gonna lose all my experiences. Like, what am I doing? That is not the case because you still
Yeah.
have those experiences and that knowledge
You come back.
that you can create. Like, you can create something out of that later on. It'll come back to you. And
Mhm.
so,
It's kind of like what, remember Steve Jobs took the calligraphy lesson one time and
right.
then like, Macintosh had these beautiful fonts, like literally like so random, but it's just how it is. Yeah.
It's just how it is. And so, the finance background, I thought I had pretty much thrown it away, but it actually came back to me, and there's a huge ROI on that because now I got a job at Ripple, and that company did really well, and that kind of like I learned a ton from that, and now I was able to start my own company coming out of that,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of
So
lessons
how
to
long were
unpack in
you
there.
at the Ripple until you started your own thing?
A year and a half,
Nice.
yeah. So
So what gave you sort of, I guess, the aha moment or the inflection point to go start your own thing?
yeah, so I really enjoy my time at Ripple. In fact, I think the company is fantastic. I just, looking back on it now in hindsight, our team was rolling. I mean, we were like pushing out, it was a small team, like 5 of us, and we were just crushing it. And I was really, really proud of our team, and like, we're doing so well. But then the regulations just hit us, and this is back in 2015, very early stages of regulation, which obviously, as you probably know, is not even clear at this point, right? The regulations of crypto, but
Right.
yeah, it started hitting us, and basically the leadership team said, "Hey, you guys gotta like stop what you're doing because we started moving actual money around the blockchain. Like we were moving from Mexican pesos into USD, and like that was being done on the blockchain, which is like really crazy because the company hadn't moved any real value on the blockchain yet. Like from a commercial
Mm.
usage perspective, yeah, we can send
Right.
money. Like I can send money to you, you can send money to me, but it was not like we actually had a service, like a remittance service that was like willing to use the blockchain. And they're like, all right, we need to stop here because it's getting a little hairy. And so like we were blocked from going any further, and literally like we would go in and like we actually went to go see a Pixar movie as a team together because we literally had nothing to do. It was crazy. And I'm someone that I need to be like moving forward. Like I get really antsy when I can't move forward. And so I
Right.
knew at that point
Right.
that it was time to leave. And so
Mm.
yeah, that's kind of my inflection point on that one.
And did you? So I guess the first company you started was that the
It's
e-commerce company?
yeah, so Urban EDC, and that's it's like the flashlight pocket knife business. Yeah.
Right. And that you grew all the way to. So give us a sense of like how big that grew, and is it still around?
Yeah, it's still around. Last year we did 3.3 million in top
Wow.
line revenue for just that company. So
Nice.
we got a couple different companies in my personal holding company.
Yeah.
But
So that is a big chunk of your portfolio, correct? At least in the
It is.
personal holding
Yes.
company. And what are some others? Like the Bulldog?
Yep, French Bulldog business, which by the way is it's a lot of fun to do because like we get to go on trips with our dogs, and like it's all pretty much tax deductible because we take a
Yeah.
lot of photos and we
Right.
get sponsorships for these deals. Like we're staying at a 5-star hotel in Sonoma in a month, and that's all free. We just have to provide
Wow.
content. And
So
so
what was the sorry, that business is an Instagram account and a content business,
yes,
correct? It's a media business.
and we have an e-commerce component as well.
Oh, wow.
So in a way, it's like a creator business with
Yeah.
heavy emphasis on the e-com side.
Right. So that's two. What's the third? Is there a third or fourth?
The third one is GrowthJet, which is the climate neutral certified third party logistics company for other
Oh,
e-commerce brands. And so that came about because we were getting a lot of interest for fulfillment because people hate, if you know e-commerce, like people hate fulfillment. It's the biggest pain
yeah.
point. And so
Right.
we took it in house, and then people were asking us about fulfillment. And so we launched with a few private clients, and we didn't have a website, and we didn't have a name, but we have paying clients. And so at that point, we're like, all right, let's
Wow.
make this a real thing. So we launched GrowthJet and just moved into a 39,000 square foot warehouse. And so yeah, that one is going strong. So that was the latest one. And then I
And
guess
then of course your current personal
yeah,
brand and the content business, right?
yes, exactly. So that this one I'm open minded to see where it goes. It's not really a business, I would say, yet. But I see kind of like seeds of what it could be, and that's what's really exciting to me is like with this personal holdco stuff. Like I think I'm gonna create some products around that. Um,
Right.
but basically, I'm keeping an open mind because I just feel like with this creator game, you never know what's gonna come. You know what I mean? Like the
Right.
opportunities, and so not a business yet, but probably will be the fourth business. Yeah.
Right. I love it. I love the diversity of all these four. I think the first question that I get when I mention sort of all the things that I do, because I'm kind of like you too, I kind of spread out across the fellowship, and then there's the, which I would consider my version of your personal brand business, which is the
Mm-hmm.
content business, and then of course some SaaS businesses and things like that. The first question that I keep getting, which I'm tossing to you, is how do you balance all the four? And like basically how do you operate like this? Don't you think that you should just focus on one and this kind of grow that for 3 decades? I know my answer, but I'm curious your answer.
Yeah. So I actually get asked this quite a lot, and so the answer really is you got to build up your team, and your team has
Yeah.
to just take everything over from you. And so
Mm.
it took me a long time to figure this out because I was actually up until last year I was still working in the business in a couple of these. So
Yeah.
the warehousing business was something that I used to go into the warehouse almost every day because I had to like make sure personnel was good, all that. But now I haven't gone in the warehouse in like a month, and I have a really strong
Mhm.
general manager who just takes care of everything for me. I talk to him on Slack every day, but it's not like he just asks me questions about different things. It's like very, very like it's high level stuff, but like having a GM that you can trust is a game changer.
It's a big,
It's
yeah.
huge, yeah. And so that's really been my secret here. And I'll give you one framework that I think about is I call it the I, we, they framework. And so
Hmm.
when you first start a company, you're the one kind of like building everything because it's like a baby. It's like your new baby. But then once you grow it, you can start getting people in and maybe hiring or maybe start working with a virtual assistant or something. But you want to work with them on it together, right? And so you kind of problem solve together, being like what works, what doesn't work. And then you graduate into like the they force portion of this, which is they are handling everything for you, and like all you got to do is
Right.
make sure that it's running smoothly, but they're doing all the
Right.
day-to-day stuff, right? So it's
Right.
the I, we, they framework, and I apply that to almost every project that I have. For example, like my newsletter too now and my podcast, like I have an executive assistant who helps me with a lot
Right.
of that. And so I
Right.
don't yeah, it's this concept of the
You're
start
still the
on your own.
editorial, I think you're still the editorial, voice, but I'm sure like a lot of that is, operated by people. I mean, that's something I'm learning too is, and I'm actually really enjoying it where I don't need to be in control to be in control. I'm realizing that there's this, like my team has been giving such great feedback this year about how KP, we love that, you're not a micromanager. And I'm shocked because I thought that's just how everybody worked. But apparently the bar is so low that if you don't micromanage somebody, you're considered like almost like a saint. And I don't micromanage others because I don't like to be micromanaged myself. If you tell me something and want me to do it, I will go do it. I don't need you to text me every hour or like give me an update. Like I'm very high trust, in that sense, which is I'm learning that it's a thing and vice versa. So when I recruit, I look for high trust. So I have projects or micro projects that I give during the interview process that are loosely defined. So I understand that they can ask me questions and like, do you operate? And so we have this really funny, company culture where I say anything on a scale of 0 to 10, less than 8, any issue that's less than 8 in terms of seriousness and burning, hair on fire, problem solve yourself. Don't come to me. And I will live with the outcome you bring me. Like, for example, if the outcome is negative or unfavorable, I will live with it. It's fine because you're training, you're learning, right? Anything over 8, come to me, right? And so they made this a meme now. And Vela, who's my EA, she made, because she DM me on the weekend for something, young, and it was about some issue, and I said, "Is this less than 8 or higher than 8?" And she said, "Well, and maybe." And then she corrected herself and said, "You know what? I can handle this." And so every time we do a team sync, now they have a meme of me in Chamat's clothes. If you remember, there was a meme where he says, "This is below my line." And so there's a meme of me in the company where I'm like doing this, saying, "This is below my line. Don't bring it to me." Right? And I think the lesson there to me, and hopefully that resonates with you, is a lot of people don't need this kind of dictatorial leadership that you think they need. Human beings, I think, operate at their best and their happiest and brightest if you let them be. They need guidance and direction, but real leadership is invisible leadership, I think. You don't need to be, no president is at the front of the army, right? But you need to inspire them, give them direction, but you don't need to sit there and do the work for them, right? I try to, the more I learn about this, I'm like, wow, this is actually a hack. Like, I'm surprised not many people are doing this. I mean, they are probably, but you just have to let people be and they'll surprise you. I mean, every once in a while, I think every 20 people I run into, I will have one bad experience, but that's the price you have to pay. You can't always be mistrusting or, low trust.
I think you got to give people the benefit of the doubt, and it's got to be based on trust. Everything has to be based on trust. And I mean, I go as as far as like my employees, they want there's like one of them is trying to create a golf, like a personal brand around golf. And so like
nice.
On one hand, I like battle with myself. I was like, do I want him to like really work on this like while working at my company? But then I'm teaching personal holding company, so I can't fault him for like listening to my podcast episodes and like trying it himself. And so I encourage it. I'm like, hey, if you need help, any tips or whatever, like you can talk to me anytime. I'm happy to help you with your personal brand also. And so like, if you think about it, what that sends the message is like, wow, like my boss is willing to like invest his own time into growing something that's not even part of his company.
Right.
And so like, that's actually, he's working like so much and so hard now because of this like level of like trust that just goes beyond the, the working environment. Right.
Absolutely. And that's another thing I've learned too, is that it's just to like not kind of dictate things for them. Do what's best for them and let them be. It's kind of like what you would do for your kids. Like I have a 2.5-year-old toddler. I love him, Neo. And this is the relationship that I want to have with him. One day he's going to be 17, 18. It's going to be too cool for dad. I want him to feel like he has a high trust with me, that he can come to me if he needs any advice or guidance. But I don't want to dictate what major he should do or what, because I've had so much pressure like that, and so I don't want that. I think so it's about kind of putting other people's interests, and then hoping that they'll reciprocate. But if they don't, kind of still offering kindness and moving on, right?
Exactly.
Okay, we got a few minutes left, so I'm gonna do a rapid fire round with you, and this is something new I've been trying with our guests. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
It's gonna be a fun one. I got a few questions. All right, let's do this. Okay, first one: favorite cuisine?
Pizza.
I'll accept it because I love pizza too. But otherwise, all right. Favorite book you wish you had read much sooner?
Anything by Jim Collins. So I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but his stuff is brilliant, and I refer to him all the time. So all of his books by Jim Collins.
Wow, I have to go try one. And these questions, by the way, they're lighter at the beginning, but they get sort of deeper as we speak, as we go through them. Okay, third one is favorite artist or musician that hypes you up?
This one's gonna be a very strange answer for most of your audience, but I listen to K-pop, and so
Oh,
there's a new group that's it's gonna sound really weird, but they're all like 14-year-old. Like there's like 5 girls, 14 years old, and they're amazing. They're called New Jeans,
you're crushing it.
and
New Jeans.
yeah,
Okay.
they're crushing it, and I mean, you should ask my wife, but like I sing those songs on karaoke. We went to karaoke and with my friends, and it was embarrassing, but
There's no shame. The other day my wife caught me singing some Taylor Swift, and she was like, "I didn't realize you were a Taylor Swift fan." I'm like, "Who isn't a Taylor Swift fan, right? Like, who isn't?"
yeah.
So, that's awesome. Okay, number 4. What's your favorite project or phase in your career?
Yeah, this one I think I'd have to say what I'm doing right now, which is, sharing my knowledge with people and inspiring them to go out and do their own. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, and initially I actually wanted to be anonymous, KP. I wanted to be wealthy but anonymous, but I've changed my viewpoint on that, and now I'm so happy when people message me and say, "Hey, like,
Yeah.
I listened to that episode you did on your podcast and it changed my life." Like, people have DM'd me this. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
insane. And like, I'm so happy
Yeah.
to hear that. So, yeah.
I resonate with that so much. I feel the same thing. I used to feel the same way. I'm like, I don't want a fame. I don't want this status. And I realized it's not really a status game or a fame game. I don't ever want to be like Eminem level famous on the street, right? But I want to be impactful. So I want to be more like Warren Buffett, level
Yes.
impactful, or take any other example, right? Where it's a sense of respect that you get from people. Like Oprah, like when I like one of the 3 people in my life that I would love to meet is Oprah. And I don't think it's about fame. It's really about the impact that she's had. So
Right.
all right, number 5. How would your parents describe what you do for a living?
I
I
honestly,
feel like
I don't
at this
even,
point they probably get yeah.
I talk to my parents and they'll be, "Oh, how's the shipping business going? How's the knife business going?" It's like that. And it's like, it's so weird because I have so many different things that I can't even describe. It's just, it's just how's business. That's it. So
How's business?
Yeah.
They're probably just happy that you're happy. I'm curious though. Do they know the podcast side of it? Like, I'm curious, how do
Yeah.
they perceive a podcast?
they know about the podcast, and I think they listen to it actually. I track
Wow,
the
nice.
downloads on these charts, and like, I mean, South Korea, I mean, who's listening to these types? I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a very niche thing, and it's not. I'm speaking English, right? Korea is a very, like, I don't know. It just feels like I see it sometimes, like climbing up the charts, and I'm like, oh, like my mom is downloading all those episodes right now. Like,
She's passing around in the WhatsApp group or something. Yeah.
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Shout out, mom. My mom, the cutest thing is that she calls what I have a broadcast. And every time she does that, I so want to correct it. I'm like, Mom, that's not a broadcast. It's called a podcast. But I don't, because I let it be. It's a reminder of sort of the innocence and where I came from, right? I'm like, wow, it's just, she doesn't know what a podcast is. She thinks I'm on radio or something. Anyway, so if Jeff Bezos calls you and offers you unlimited supply of one item from Amazon, what would you pick?
I'm gonna have to go with pallet wrap on this, which is insane, right? Because I mean, who
Wait,
wants?
what is it? What's a pallet wrap?
It's for the fulfillment business. We have to wrap pallets.
Dude, spoken like a true logistics,
I know, right?
entrepreneur. Oh my god. Oh
Yeah.
my god. That's so funny. That's so funny. Okay, what's your? This is a little deep. What is your definition of success?
Yeah, I ultimately, KP, I think success just means happiness, right? And and this is a very, so it means different things to different people. So if like for me, I have very ambitious goals, and so I mean, I try to be happy, but then obviously there's next levels that I gotta keep achieving. But like there are other people who are, there's like monks that are happy with like no material possessions, and like
Right.
sometimes I'm like jealous. I'm like, wow, I wish I could be built that way where I can just like be so grateful and happy for just like living.
Yeah.
And so I have to remind myself a lot of that, like, just, hey, like, you don't need any of this, like, you can just be happy yourself. And so like it's a very like deep and philosophical like question that I have with myself a lot, which is like why am I chasing this, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of it? But then like, I
Right.
don't know, I just feel like business is a game and I like to win, so it's
Yes. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel the same in a way. Like, I have a perfect blend of almost 50-50. 50% of my friends are ambitious, they're aspiring billionaires, and I feel like I resonate with them. And then the other 50% I have from my Buddhist days and like the some of these, retreat centers I've been to, they're just happy and content. And even like the fellowship, there's a couple of friends that I have who are very peaceful. Andrew, shout out if he's listening. When I talk to him, he does meditation stuff, and I'm like, wow, so peaceful, so calm, and he's just happy being at the beach, like drawing on the sand or something. So like, my brain's always like switching between, ambition to just contentment, and so it's like, it's just you got two parts of it, and I just accepted that that's where I am. I can't change any one or the other. But okay, last one. What is the proudest part of your story? Of your career, of your life so far?
Yeah. So a big shift happened for me when I started thinking about the families that I'm impacting through my own company. And so this is not about me and my wife and our two French bulldogs. This is about, the employees that are working. They're basically have chosen to work for me out of all the other opportunities that they could be doing. And when I think about that is like really meaningful to me. And the fact that I'm like responsible for not only them but their families' livelihoods, like that's heavy, and so I'm really like grateful and happy to have that kind of impact. And to be honest, like a lot of solopreneurs, they miss out on this. I don't know. It's like they think of managing employees as a pain, and I would say for sure there's a lot of pain aspects to it. But you're making a real difference in these families' lives, and I feel like there's something to that. So
yeah, I agree. I'm on the same camp too, which is funny because I feel like we've said a lot of things that I agree with. Especially this one. I'm on the camp of like building a team and kind of really impacting them and helping them. Because I don't think of them as sort of a burden. I think some of this is a personality thing, maybe, because I always kind of resonate with people and things like that. And like, yeah, so I couldn't agree more. I don't think I could ever be a solopreneur forever. I just not my jam at all. Thank you so much for being here, man. It's been such a pleasure. The 55 minutes of official recording went by so quick. I appreciate you a lot. Thanks for that authentic energy you put out on Twitter and today. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so my podcast is at firstclassfounders.com, and you can just search First Class Founders on Apple or Spotify or whatever. Do a lot of deep dives on my business philosophy and all sorts of stuff there. I'm also pretty active on Twitter also, as KP mentioned. So I'm at Yong-Soo Chung. That's YONGSOOCHUNG. And I'm pretty active in DMs also. So if you feel inspired by my story here, then just shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to talk to you. So
that's awesome. I'm going to include all of these in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much for being here, and can't wait to continue our friendship and keep rooting, for you.
Thanks, KP, man. This is a blast, and I'm so glad that we connected on this deeper level today. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you. All right. And that's a wrap.